I'm going to say good afternoon and welcome. My name is Andrew Carpenter. I am Chief Executive of Constructing Excellence Southwest and the Midlands, and also Chief Executive of the Structural Timber Association. These webinars started life before Easter with those three organisations, and we've subsequently added CE Wales, we've added CE in the North East, and also the Housing Forum, and are now running them concurrently with all six organisations at 12 o'clock on a Tuesday and a Friday. And I'm pleased to say that we've built up quite an audience. Initially, we started life by taking COVID-19 subject matter, but more recently, we've widened the scope, and we're looking at other critical issues that the UK construction industry is dealing with. Delighted that Bola's here today. Thank you for joining us. It's lovely to see you, and I thank you for joining us on this Friday. Before Bola starts the presentation, I'm going to just hand over to Howard and ask him if he'd take us through the house rules. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Yep, welcome to everyone. Simply, you'll see on your Zoom bar three important things to use. You've all found the chat ability. As Bola is going to run through his presentation and take questions at the end. So please, as questions come to you, do use the Q&A menu to write questions. I will encourage you, if you'd like to own your question, because at the end I can bring you on screen if you would like, and we can then obviously bring you on and you can speak directly. People can see you, and maybe we can have a follow-up question or whatever from you. So please do that. If you wish to remain anonymous, that's absolutely fine. I will be hosting the event and I will make sure your questions put to Bola. In terms of hands up, if people do want to come in later on, I will ask to hands up, and then I can certainly bring people into the conversation. The whole of today is being recorded. So in terms of if people don't want to have their name or anything, you can remain anonymous, but you still can ask questions. I'm now going to ask Bola to introduce himself, and I look forward to listening very much, as I'm sure we all do, to conversations that matter. Over to you, Bola.
Thanks, Howard, John, Andrew, and thank you to everyone for joining us on this timely conversation, if nothing else. There's a few names I recognize, and for those that I don't, welcome everyone. My name is Bola Abisogun. I am a chartered quantity surveyor for my sins, and the topic of today's conversation is encouraging ethnic diversity in construction and diversity of thought. I do a number of things, wear a number of hats, but today I'm wearing my Chairman of Diversity Surveyors, founder and chair, an organization that's set up for 2006 now. And essentially what I want to do today is just tease the conversation with all of you. I think it's long overdue. And with that being said, I'll endeavor to share my screen and commence with my short presentation. So, as it says here, and I hope you can all see that, I am supported by the Mayor of London on a number of initiatives, including Moving On Up, which itself is described on another slide. A bit about diversity surveyors. Essentially, we founded in 2006, like I said before, and we launched formally in 2017. And we are the first RICS BAME network with almost 1,000 active members across the globe. Now, there's a reason for the gap between 2006 and 2017, and that is literally in tangible terms and in quantitative terms. That's the period of time it took me to progress the conversation far enough across the surveying profession to get the support of a formal launch. And whilst it was a challenging process, it was something that I fully enjoyed, and I've received a few war wounds as a result of it. But I am thick-skinned, and I am prepared to continue. So let's see if I can now move that slide. Okay. So this is the key slide of the presentation. And for me, this represents a number of things. It has been the bane of my existence. And I thought Building Magazine, to their credit, have captured the sentiment of the conversation that we're having today very well. And in my case, this conversation started back literally when I graduated in '94, but in '99, I had what is now called a moment of career trauma when I became acquainted with the magazine on your left, 14th of May, 1999. And the truth behind that is I was in the office preparing for my APC later in that year, and a senior surveyor walked into the room, threw the magazine at me and said that I should consider myself fortunate. And, you know, in a split second, I had two choices. I could have become really upset and done some things I probably would have regretted, or, as I did, take it on the chin and shed a few tears, which I did outside. The brutal reality is that that was May 1999, and in April 2019, last year, Building Magazine went with a similar story, which basically read almost verbatim over a period of 20 years. And that, to me, is the uncomfortable truth, that in my career, for the duration of my active career, it has pretty much been business as usual across the surveying profession, and in particular, the construction industry that I operate within. So, what is it and why should we? Ethnic diversity. As I said, I'm working very closely with the Mayor of London, and in 2018, the Mayor expressed his full support in more ways than one, but typically by supporting an initiative that I chair called Moving On Up. And this was his comment, and this is what I wanted to share with the audience today. And as you can see, the Mayor himself was willing to be quoted that he wasn't sure whether it is the education system or whether it is just a case of discrimination. But what he did say also was that young people, in particular, young Black men who I work with, need to recognize that there's an opportunity for them in construction. And it's something that many still today don't consider a viable career option. So this is just an overview of what Moving On Up is attempting to do. We are currently in phase 2. I've been chair from inception in 2013-14 when we were working on the business case. And as you can see, initially the focus was simply trying to raise awareness across all sectors about engaging with young Black men as a potential group of young people to engage, whether it be through friendships, work placements, etc. And I, of course, was flying the flag for construction and in particular surveying, failing miserably in the process. So in phase 2, we took the view that we have to have a collective effort to promote this sector and engage better with construction employers. So that is my ambassadorial role at the moment. I've been doing it for many years. And we have also decided to expand that conversation into financial services and information technology. And that is why I'm more optimistic and more excited about the successes that we have achieved so far during phase 2. Moving on very quickly to another need to just develop the talent pool. You know, I sit here as a 26-year professionally qualified chartered quantity surveyor, recognizing that everything I was taught between 1991 and 94 still applies, but only in part, because the roles on the left of your screen exist at the moment and pretty much form the backdrop for the contingent workforce that we rely on at all levels. The workforce on the right, however, will be reflective of the kinds of individual skill sets that are going to be required, not in the future, but actually right now. And I think everybody on the left has to perhaps mind map how they become relevant on the right. And within that, the businesses themselves also need to create new business models. And this is where the disruption for me could be really interesting and exciting. Lastly, I'll just give you a slide that represents my journey. So the Kingsmead estate in Hackney was, and it clearly was, a sink estate, one of the most deprived wards in the country at the time. I was born and raised there, lived there until my teens, so very, very passionate about Hackney and East London. And it took 48 years, thankfully, and all credit goes to my parents and my maker, to end up at the Buckingham Palace and meeting His Royal Highness. Now, I didn't see it coming. It's still a blessing. I'm still kind of getting used to having those 3 letters after my name, but it took me 48 years. And even now, I still recognize that talent just isn't enough as a Black professional. And I say that openly and with complete conviction. Irrespective of what I've achieved as an individual, today, some would even say that my successes have been offensive. But I'm gifted, I'm equipped, I know my purpose, and I want to execute with excellence. And to that point, I will close with my last slide. And on the topic of quotas, and I'm currently talking with many about quotas, I'm all for quotas of excellence. And without pushing the boundaries of what we've achieved to date, and understanding that actually we've got to do something different if we really want to engage and encourage ethnic diversity, we've got to be prepared to just challenge the established norms. And that is my last slide, and I will stop sharing and perhaps revert back to Andrew and others.
Thank you, Bola, very much. Howard, are you coming online?
Yep, I'm here.
Help I'm here. Q&A. We've only got one question.
Well, I think we have another one that I think is quite an interesting one. That, okay. Let's take the question first. So the question comes from Deborah Wilder. We very much want to increase diversity in our industry. That's in brackets design and build. Not just BAME, but to widen it to women too. Do you think we have to focus purely on the BAME first before we focus on women?
It's a fabulous question. And the reality is that irrespective of the strand of diversity that we attempt to deal with, you can overlay any strand with ethnicity and achieve a positive outcome. So increasing the number of women across the sector is a given. I'm all for that. I'm also trying to demonstrate that the professional Black women that approach me with horror stories of their existence in the sector also need to have a voice. And in many cases, that voice is muted. So I'm in agreement with you, irrespective of sector. We need more women, we need more people. But my view is we need the best people. We just don't want people, we want the best people. And a lot of good people are not considering, or dare I say it, staying, because many have coined the phrase that the sector in many ways is culturally incompetent. So I'm happy to listen to ideas. I have a lot of people at my disposal, and it's a conversation that needs to happen, not just with me, but with the wider populace in the sector. So I'm in agreement with that ask. And if you're asking for a process as how to do that successfully, I've said it before, leaders of businesses need to be vulnerable. They need to become vulnerable to the conversation about diversity, period. And within that, take a strand as far as they can, and then pick another strand. And collectively, they will get there with diversity. But it starts with the leadership of the organization so that the culture of the organization can change as well as everything else, if that makes sense.
Questions
Thanks,
coming
Bola.
in thick and fast now, Howard, aren't they? So
Yes, I mean, I've got an interesting one that's come in the chat pane that I think I want to put in. I'm a white male who fully recognises the contribution of all members of a team, no matter who they are. Slides need to expand references beyond young black men, as your good and powerful messages go beyond that. And I think that's something, Bola, that you and I had a chat about a little bit beforehand, that racism actually is a two-way thing. It isn't all just one side.
Agreed. And it's, this isn't a conversation about black and white. It shouldn't be. But I would draw attention to the title of the webinar, and it does say ethnic diversity. So my contribution today has been framed around the ethnic contingent, and in my case, the black contingent. So I totally agree with everybody who would have a similar sentiment to the gentleman himself. But the fact is, statistically, young black men fare worse on every single demographic in this country. And that is why the government have recognized that at a central level and at a local level. The Mayor of London is committed to supporting that initiative. We could also take the issue of working class white young men, and who equally have quite dismal life chances. But statistically, across the piece, young black men have fared worse. And that is the group that resonate with me for obvious reasons. And I feel compelled to support others in that pursuit of making the talent pool more inclusive.
I've got 3 questions here from 3 people. I wonder whether Rita Tapia, Mark Southgate, or Michael Jones would like to join the conversation. I'm very happy to bring you in if you would. Mark's put, I was going to say, put your hands up, and I'm very keen to bring you in. So please do that. So we've got Mark has put his hand up, so I'm going to bring him in now. So give it a second, Mark, and you'll be able to ask your question directly. You'll need to unmute yourself. And if you want to open your camera and let people see, you can. If not, it's up to you. Over to you, Mark.
Now, yeah, you can see me now. Afternoon, Bola.
Hi, Mark. You well?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
I love the beard.
Yeah, it's a bit of a COVID beard growing here, and COVID hair as well. So apologies. I was interested in your comment around the moving on up thing and around the attractiveness of IT and financial services versus construction. And is that a sectoral thing, or is that just, are they more welcoming? Are they more visible? Are there less barriers in those industries than in construction? I think is what you were saying.
Well, I think actually the point I was trying to make, Mark, was that all 3 sectors suffer the same common denominator. So they are finding it challenging to deal with their black contingent. For me personally, given that every construction project is funded, and given that every construction project engages with IT, it's a very interesting position of conversation that has now arisen across all 3 sectors. So it's been a cross-sell with an amazing outcome in terms of, well, actually, we've got a similar challenge over here. How can we compare notes? So that's the reason why the Mayor has underwritten the strategy around those 3 sectors to taking less of a reliance of construction and becoming more engaging with other 2 sectors that have an intrinsic component within the delivery of every construction project. So I hope that kind of sets the scene for you.
If I can just come in then, I think it links to your slide around the skills in the industry now and the skills that we need in the future. That was a really interesting slide, and actually there's something around how we make that just attractive to all young people, including those from ethnic backgrounds, because I think there's, and the IT and, as you said, financial link to that is quite interesting as well. I think it's about selling a slightly different profession to the one we have been, and that'll also do stuff around the sort of who we bring into the industry.
Correct. And I'm excited about that, Mark. I've got to be honest with you. I see myself as a quantity surveyor, moving now more towards disruptive tech that should generate better outcomes for the client. So, and that's me saying that as a QS, recognizing that parts of what I do as a QS really just aren't worth my salt anymore. I shouldn't be doing them. I should be using my time more strategically and achieving a higher value proposition to the clients that I engage with using technology.
Great, thanks, Bola.
Thanks, Mark. Michael, I've brought you in, so if you want to open your microphone, you can certainly ask your question now.
Yeah, my question is quite a general one, really, as to quotas. And I just wonder whether quotas result in in discrimination against others who may be better qualified and better suited. I think there should be equal opportunities for everybody, and don't get me wrong there, but I wonder if quotas are the way to address it.
Fabulous question, and it was designed to be provocative. But this is why I framed it as quotas of excellence. So, irrespective of your background, social capital, connectivity, etc., we are looking at those that are best equipped, not known or unknown, but best equipped to participate. And regarding quotas of excellence, I would look at my own peer group and say, well, actually, of my peer group are the best who are available in the best positions. And generally that answer, male or female, irrespective of race, is a no. Because it's, we are in a business where it's who you know or who knows you, etc., largely. So to introduce quotas of excellence dictate that taking names of CVs for a start will reveal the person's specification who is best placed to deliver the role. And that is kind of where I'm going with that provocative statement around quotas of excellence.
So that's not quota related to disadvantaged individuals. It's more a case of, would that be an anonymous based on person specification without any reference to ethnicity or otherwise?
I think it's kind of moving in that direction, but nameless CVs are a start that many businesses are using. I'm really talking from a lived experience perspective where clearly I and another were better qualified, but yet still overlooked. So I'm trying to move away from race and actually let's compare apples with apples if possible. And if we look at things on a like-for-like basis, clearly A is better than B, but you still run with B because you're comfortable. Those kinds of conversations we need to start to really look into and unpack why we do those things, putting conscious and unconscious bias aside. It's a simple conclusion, yeah? If you want an Aston Martin, you're going to buy an Aston Martin. You may settle for something else, but you want the Aston Martin. It's a simple conclusion from where I'm sitting. But I take your point around quotas. It's provocative, and I suppose by design it was always supposed to be. But quotas of excellence are a specific demand I'm making based on the capacity and capability of some individuals that are continuously overlooked.
Yeah, I just wonder whether the word quotas perhaps presents a misleading picture of what you're trying to achieve there.
But I think actually it's done exactly what it was supposed to do. It's generated a conversation between me and you. And that's why it's designed to be provocative. I want to tease the conversation, and by using words that people resonate with, we will have the conversation about what I actually mean, and the clarification will become the outcome of our conversation, hopefully.
Okay, good.
Thank you. I think, I don't want to be controversial here, but from an HR perspective, I have seen over the years recruitment where piles of CVs come in. And to be honest, I've felt disgusted that the first thing that the person did was sift through it on the names, Bola. And if the names didn't look what they wanted, it was just the names that were chucked out.
Yeah, regrettably, Howard, I've heard too many of those horror stories. I've been in those lists. I've been in those candidate pools.
I'm sure you have.
But the point is, these things either make you or break you. I have learned to love rejection throughout my career. I've learned to take the bullets of denial. But the point is, you become resilient. I'm immune to that pain now, and I have to inspire others to keep going in the face of adversity. And the fact is, it takes a while to get there. In my case, 26 years, and I still get rejected today for certain things, but it's a process. But I am equipped, and I am definitely capable of delivering amazing outcomes. And if not here, then somewhere, but it will happen. And others need to have that conviction about themselves. Largely, a lot of the disappointment that people suffer is because their confidence takes a knock. And if your confidence takes a knock, it's very hard to muster the ability to keep moving forward. And once your confidence is rocked in a certain way, it may become irreparable for some, and they call that, career trauma. But for me, I've had to do things in an unconventional way to get results, and based on that lived experience, I'm sharing the pathway and the outcome for others, so that they too can kind of navigate their own dark waters if they are dark, so that they can get the right results as well.
Thank you. I've got some questions, a couple I can read out in a minute, but just before I do that, I've got a question from Emma Luddington, one from Simon Shuker, one from Fiona Moore. So if you would like to ask your question directly, please put your hand up and I'll bring you in a minute. But meanwhile, I have two questions here from Rita, who embarrassingly said she hasn't combed her hair, so she didn't want to come on. So the first question is, how do you engage and encourage young BME people and their families in realizing that construction is a viable career choice? There is so much talk and little actual action. What can we as a sector do?
Engaging young black men to join the industry.
Yeah.
How to do that?
Well, how do you engage and encourage young BME people and their families in realizing that construction is a viable career choice? And I think the emphasis here is engage and encourage.
Well, I can only tell you how I've done it in the past, which is basically going in at grassroots level. But there were lots of schools and all kinds of forums involved, Go Construct, CITB. There were lots of forums that have started this process already. I think in many ways what they lack is authenticity and representation. And that is why I've almost plugged myself into that space as being someone that's experienced something in real life and willing to share my experiences about how it panned out. And I'm happy to be open and honest and not sugarcoat the truth. And I think young people have a respect for that. And because I've got a lived experience, I can help others get through. I mean, the number of young people I've helped along the way through the APC process and become qualified is quite a significant number. And, I think largely they tell me they would have dropped out a long time ago had I not been there to kind of give them that prod on those dark days. And that whole mentorship piece is kind of where it comes from with me. But to your point around how do you do it, there's no silver bullet. It starts with the conversation. It starts with leaders. It starts with organizations that recognize that there's a talent pool that they need to engage. And unless young people generally see the expanse of the opportunity in construction, not just the obvious, we're going to continue to fail in that regard. And that's my perspective. What I have done, I've opened your microphone, Rita, as you didn't want to come on, obviously. So you are able to have a conversation and re-answer on that, but you've also got another question you may want to pose.
Yeah, so I just want to come back on that last response that Bola gave. My major concern, I've headed up diversity and done diversity in a lot of my roles. I can do it by the age of my daughter. So for 14 years ago, and these things are cyclical, I'm sure they are. But my main concern, I think, is not just the young BME talent that we know is out there. It's engaging with their parents. It's engaging with their families. When I speak to young Asian children, young Black children, they don't want to do this. They think that working in construction, that we're going to be putting them out on a road, digging a hole in the ground. But they don't understand, that actually being an engineer on HS2, being an engineer, in some of the massive projects that we have going across this country will mean that they will be, let's be honest, quids in, because some of these roles pay really, really well. And I've told them that, if you do it for nothing else, do it for the money, because you'll have a fantastic life. But it's trying to get that information to their parents, to the people that have the most influence on them, I suppose, because it's great that you can go out as a role model and say, right, well, I'm doing this, you can see yourself in me, but we're not there with them constantly. They go home and say, no, I want you to be a doctor, dentist, lawyer, whatever you want to be. I've just found that children's or young people's career aspirations are very different to their parents, and their parents want them to do better, do well. And it's the parents I'm interested in engaging with. The children, by all intents and purposes, will, you know, if they see something as a sufficient route to cash, will take it.
I agree.
You want that kind of constant message.
I agree. I agree. Thanks for that, Rita. You know, I'll make no bones about it. My parents were not happy about me coming into construction. I love mathematics, and you know, I was supposed to be a lawyer, and obviously quantity surveyors deal with construction law anyway. But you know, I started carrying the hod at 15, and the day that my mum saw me come home with a hod, it was like, no, definitely not. But I had higher aspirations. I'd seen a quantity surveyor turn up on the site, and I saw what happened, and I thought, well, that's what I want to do. And I went against the grain of my parents' best wishes coming into construction, and I understand why they had reservations. So I agree, parent engagement is critical. And again, it's something that I've been able to do quite successfully, because parents generally, regardless of race, are curious about construction and what that could mean for their child, because it's generally been considered the sector for those that don't succeed elsewhere. But you know, I'm ever the optimist, and I have high expectations about my own capability, and I project that into the young people that I talk to. But the parents, you know, they ask challenging questions, and rightly so. But you know, you've got to have the ability to empathize with them and also advise them on the options that are available. And again, it's something that I've been able to do well because of the partners that I've worked with in the past. But I take your point. Parent engagement is critical.
Thank you, Bola. My other question, sorry, and I won't take up much more of your time. I have put a question to the panel to say that I found that leadership of an organisation is great at fronting programmes, but when push comes to shove, the old boys network in all industries I've worked in, so I'm not picking on construction alone, trumps everything. And I have found that throughout my career. You know, everybody's great at signing things and getting a bit of PR and marketing. But when it's like, who do we put into the senior role? Yeah, well, I know Joe, he's great. He's my friend's brother's auntie or whatever. That'll do. And we won't go through the sort of, you know, the proper route. And that is really, really, that's like bang your head against a brick wall, because I feel like I cannot. You can advise as much as you want, but as and I'm a recruiter, I head up resourcing at Tarmac. And this is not this particular, you know, organisation that I'm talking about, but you can advise as much as you want, but essentially they'll decide because they know who they want, and your job then as a recruiter becomes to facilitate that requirement rather than challenge it, and your own sort of feelings are put to one side, or the ethical feelings are put to one side, not your own. Yeah,
I agree, and you're right. It's common, you know, in most sectors. And, you know, I've framed my lived experience in construction. And, you know, whilst I recognize it happens, and we all do, rather than such a repetitive incident break me, it actually inspires me, because I've had to become better as an individual. You know, I've thought I've been overlooked for something. Then I thought, well, actually, I'm clearly better than you anyway, but I'm going to go the extra mile. And I think that also upsets a lot of people, irrespective of race, that they have to work so much more harder to stand still. Is quite offensive to some. But again, I've become immune to that pain, and I have to use that experience around my why to create energy in others who, but for, would give up.
Thank you, Rita.
Thank you.
I've now got Emma Luddington, who's, if you want to open up your microphone and camera if you wish, you can speak directly with Bola.
Hi, Bola. Thanks very much for you giving your time to us this lunchtime. My question picks up actually a little bit on Rita's point, a little about the conversation that you had before it, and it's about unconscious bias. So noting that people might be recruiting, they might be making decisions about their own journey through school and through future career, and also the way that recruitment happens. How do we help people to realize what kind of unconscious biases they might have? Certainly for me, conversations that I've been having in recent weeks as a result of the Black Lives Matter movement, I've been really shocked by peers and stakeholders that say, oh, it's okay, you know, I know a Black person, I'm friends with them, there's no problem, and not realizing really what the issue was. So what steps do we take practically to turn the understanding of what unconscious biases we all have and how we tackle those? What can we do to move forward?
I was really hoping someone wouldn't ask me that question because I don't have the answer. I don't have the answer because we're all human, and the number of times I've seen biases at work consciously. You know, the unconscious bias element of the conversation, you're trying to disprove something that is in their DNA. Not rightly or wrongly, it's in their DNA. Now, how do you disprove that your car is going forward when it's going forward? Unless you slam it into reverse. You can't do that with human beings. So I'm not even a fan of the training, because the training is just a process. The training doesn't dictate the outcome, unfortunately. But I think the conversation will. You know, I keep defaulting to the conversation because in my mind, it's the silver bullet. You've just got to understand where people are and understand that difference is good. And if you can understand that my differences and your differences, the best of both, can achieve an amazing outcome, then you can begin to unravel that conundrum around the biases. And, you know, I've said in my piece with RICS recently that there's nothing wrong with prejudice. We've all got prejudices. We just mustn't use those prejudices to annihilate opportunities for others. Not remove, not destroy, annihilate. You know, you're taking opportunities out of the picture for others just because you know you can. That is not right. And that's a conversation that has to happen. You know, you can't write a process or a strategy to cure that. You can't send someone on training for a day or two or a week. No, it's a conversation. You know, this conversation should have started years ago. You know, I found myself talking to myself in rooms at some point because I was talking to the wrong people. And the wrong people are those that get it. I believe most of you are on the call today. I want to talk to people that just don't get it and want to know why. Why are you talking about race and ethnicity? Why are you talking about people that you think should be in the industry? We've got people in the industry, yeah, but they're aging. And well, we can go and get people that they know. And that's the point, that's the problem. You need to be talking to people that are not in the industry, may want to come in and possibly don't look like you. So to get there quickly, we've got to start the conversation, and it will be uncomfortable because actually that's what progress means. But apart from that, I don't have the answer, Emma. But great question, though.
It's been pointed out by Marie Naveen that, in fact, and I've listened to many of them, there are useful TED Talks like this that may be a good start to tackle unconscious bias. So if anyone's interested, whip off to TED Talks. Thanks very much, Emma, for that. I've got Simon Shuker here. Are you ready to come on, Simon?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody, and good afternoon, Bola, and it's a pleasure to speak to you. A question for you. I'm a mentor for students, undergraduate students at Plymouth and elsewhere in civils, geology, and various other bits and pieces, many of whom have been from the BAME sector. Now, yeah. I'm not, clearly. How important do you think it is that students at that level see and have mentors from their own sector to give them the encouragement and the push to say, like yourself, listen, this is a career that you can and should be successful in, and there are people already making a success of it in this business, and I'm one of them. You know, this is just an example. What do you think?
I totally agree. Representation matters, Simon, and particularly for those who have not yet come into the industry. I mean, and this is the reason why I have allowed universities. I think the most recent was South Bank University. I've done Nottingham Trent, where I've gone in to talk to their BAME contingent, and it was principally around my lived experience and the fact that, it may not be easy, but it's not impossible. And that kind of narrative is what they need to hear. And, it's not a necessity that it comes from somebody that looks like them. It's just ideal. That's because you and I, with the conversation going in a positive direction, you can understand me, and I believe you can communicate how I operate, how I think, how I feel, or what I felt. That's possible for me to convey that to you, and in doing that, you can do that to others. So it's not a necessity, it's just ideal. The problem is we don't have many role models, even at a senior level, who are willing to come out and share their story. It's something that I'm working on and have been for years, the whole mentorship piece. But I agree, it's ideal if it can happen. And I think with the whole virtual world we have now, it can happen a lot more. So, I'm a fan of that anyway. And I agree, it can be hugely beneficial. In many cases, it can be the difference between someone deciding and not deciding to enter and stay. Entering is one thing, staying, retention is the other thing. That is more important to me about their journey and their trajectory from university or wherever into the industry. Because once they get in, dare I say, in a culturally incompetent environment, it will be really difficult to keep them in, and therefore they'll have to resonate with others of their social demographic, ethnic demographic, to just keep that light burning about, listen, it was never designed to be easy for anybody. It's just slightly more challenging for you because of a number of things you cannot control. Therefore, you have to find a way to network with others and find that courage to keep going. So yeah, to your point around mentorship, it's critical. It really is.
I couldn't agree more. And as an indication of where that starts, I came from a very white background pre-university. I went to Aston University to study civils, and a more diverse background in university you probably couldn't get then and now. And I've got to say, one of the first contacts I made there in my class is Nelson Ogunshakin. And really? He's now, from being the Associated Consulting Engineers head, and he's now head of FIDIC internationally. What better role model can you have for that sector in civil engineering construction? So,
and he's one of my mentors.
Absolutely. And a great friend of mine, and always willing to just give any help that he can. Absolutely amazing mentor and leader, really. So yes, that's the example and role models that we all need.
And it works. I mean, and there you go, Simon. That's my point exactly. I think it was not too long after I became acquainted with the cover of Building Magazine in '99, I reached out to Nelson and we had a conversation about that edition of Building Magazine. And he was the one that told me, Bola, the industry needs more like you. You've got to find a way to stay. 21 years later, God willing, I'm still here. So, it works. It works.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Simon. You happy with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Very good.
I've got Fiona. If you want to come in now, Fiona.
Yeah, thank you very much. Hi, Bola.
Hi.
I had a very simple, possibly naive question to ask about why construction is worse than other industries at attracting young black men. You've answered that to some extent. The worry is you're the one that's expected to carry the shovel. Then I was going to ask you what attracted you, and you've answered that around your experience and actually seeing why the industry could be so attractive. So I'm afraid I'm a bit naughty here. I've moved my questions on a little bit. Anybody who knows me knows I'm really interested in digital disruption. Fabulous. So I'd like to learn from you your take on digital construction and how it will change things for the BAME community and other diverse communities. And also, second question, if I may ask both questions at once, you talk about those who don't get it. Is there an argument for putting something together that highlights the benefits of diversity to them? so that they can see the hard and fast facts around, you know, why this is important, why it's not only about fairness, but it's about creating a better industry for all of us and better outcomes for all of us?
Well, Fiona, it's a pity you're asking this question now with only 10 minutes left, but you know, disruption, I am so excited. You know, my career has taken a new lease of life, because as far back as 1994, I wrote my thesis in artificial intelligence in construction claims management in 94. And they thought I was a madman then. They still think I'm a madman today. But the point is, the world has arrived in AI. And so I'm excited about disruption. As a quantity surveyor, I'm also happy to relinquish a number of tasks that I found burdensome and boring, basically, to technology. What I want to do is check and verify that what the machine says it is what it is. That's my new role as a strategic advisor. That's not to say my measurement and costing skills will die. I think they will improve. But I want to spend my time doing better things and achieving better client outcomes. So on the disruption piece, I'm actually started last year with RICS, an initiative called PQS 2030. And what I'm trying to do with that initiative is boldly articulate what the role of the QS will look like in 10 years' time, but today. So to your point, you know, feel free to reach out and check out what PQS 2030 is trying to do. And to your second point around those that don't get it, there's lots out there, you know, and I don't want to offend anybody by saying, you know, those that don't get it. What I mean is those that are unwilling to have the conversation. And, you know, we need to move beyond a position of choice. You know, we need to move into a position of necessity. You know, we have to talk about everything to do with people. You know, this industry thrives on people. It's a people business. People do business with people they like, and in some cases, people that they don't like, but it's a people business. And so those that don't get the need to talk about everyone need to be exposed to the conversation. And there are a number of forums. I mean, we've had a couple of posts in the chat, and clearly there's a lot going on there, but there's no one place I would send anybody to go and look. But I would say that if you work in construction, start talking to your colleagues about stuff, not the project, not the budget, not the client, just stuff. It starts there. Could be anything. But, you know, great question on disruption. I'm very excited about the industry moving forward.
Thanks very much. I'm conscious of time running down. I can ask Bola if he's happy to stay on for another 5 minutes more to answer as many questions as we can. Are you happy with that, Bola?
I'm more than happy, yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Rob Lamb, I think you've got your microphone open. What I might do after this is to try and speed the questions up. I might read a few out. So bear with me on that afterwards, and I'll try and open it up if we have time. Many thanks. Over to you, Rob.
Thanks very much. Hi, Bola.
Hi, Rob.
I'll try and set the question briefly, but the industry's recognised it's got a challenge with skills and capacity, and it has done for many years. So it's not just about attracting certain individuals to the industry, it's got a general problem with attracting talent. And it's got a particular problem then about attracting people from diverse backgrounds. So I think it sits within a bigger problem as an industry's wrestling with. And I think the challenge, therefore, in terms of attracting people from more diverse backgrounds isn't necessarily just a kind of moral or nice thing to do. It's a business critical issue. It's actually fundamental for the industry to attract different new talent, which it's wrestling with. The CLC has become, the Construction Leadership Council has, I think, become an even stronger voice for the industry over the last couple of months, more of a strong convening body. And with the plan that they've launched, the recovery plan, there's a strong emphasis linking to the previous discussion about transformation and modernisation.
Absolutely.
But a key theme of that will still remain, you know, the skills and the people that work within the industry and attracting people. So really my question is more around how, if at all, there's been any engagement from the Moving On Up or any other organisation that you're involved with, Bola, or whether indeed now is kind of the platform time, given all the changes, and there's almost a perfect storm going on, I think, with society and with the industry around change, whether now's the time to link in with the CLC and really become part of that conversation about how we deal with both the attracting talent along with particularly then the diversity issue.
Well, Rob, you have never let me down as a client. You've always been engaging at the front end of that conversation, and I appreciate that. It's good to see you. It's been years since I've seen you, Rob. So, and you're right. The one thing that was missing from the recovery was anything to do with ED&I. And to his credit, a number of my colleagues went back, Sharon Slinger in particular, to Mark over at Mace, and has asked a question. So we have already progressed that very piece with the CLC. And, dare I say it was an oversight because of the voices around the table. And that's the elephant in the room. It always has been. But the CLC, as and should be, representative of the entire sector. And I think they're trying. This isn't a right or wrong situation. This is a progressive conversation. And once they'd realized that it was some oversight on ED&I, but thanks for telling us, let's figure it out. And that's how it should be. It's not offensive. I was on the phone earlier on today and I was saying, look, it's not about special measures. It's about equal treatment at best. It's about being included. And you are right, absolutely right, Rob. This is a cross-sector, it's intersectional sectional conversation around people, not black or white. And the aging of the population is what worries me. And that's why I think there's a huge emphasis now on modern methods. But the gap in the middle, from the people we lose to the processes becoming normal, that gap in the middle of called transition, that's our no man's land. And that's where I see real structural problems beginning to emerge already. What COVID has done is demonstrated how fragile we are as a sector. And I'm saying, rightly or wrongly, that on the 19th of June 2020, the global construction industry technically is insolvent, and the only client capable of bankrolling businesses is the government, and they too are challenged because they have the entire society of issues to deal with. And in the midst of that, they still have to continue to maintain the built environment. So you're right about the fact that this conversation applies to everyone. And I'm completely mindful of that. But what concerns me is that the definition of everyone is different to everyone. And the definition of everyone should be inclusive. And for many people, it's exclusive. And that's why we need to start the conversation around, what do you mean when you talk about diversity? And can we go through all the strands? It's a no-brainer, but the conversation has to start.
So what COVID has also shown us is obviously what can be achieved when industry faces a challenge head on and comes together along with government to deal with that. And I think the response from CLC has shown that, bringing everybody together. So it maybe is a point of encouragement, you say, that Mark Reynolds has taken on board the point about the diversity aspect within the sort of skills and talent part. So maybe there's reason to be optimistic there then, Bola.
Absolutely. I'm ever the optimist, Rob, you know that. And Marcus, he's played a blinder immediately, no delay at all. So the CLC are there to serve a purpose, and I think they're doing a great job. I love the roadmap. It's interesting, but my particular sweet spot is transformation, and in particular, digital transformation, because I think it's going to be a complete game changer.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Rob.
Okay, I'm going to do a little bit selective some questions because some of them have been answered in some of the ways. So I think this one is quite interesting just as a general thing. What are your thoughts on including Black history in the education system in this country?
As a question?
Yeah.
Well, personally, I think I would have benefited from it had it been back then. I think, it's arrived as part of the conversation today, and I think it won't do any harm, if I may be so bold. And I think it would expand the mind of all people about what has actually happened versus what we think happened based on the literature that we're given to read. So I'm all for it because it just makes sense, not because it's Black history. It just, you know, it gives you a full 360 perspective, ideally, on what happened, and we don't have to assume or misinterpret the truth for what it is. And, you know, therefore, I think the next gen, and that's my focus in all of this. This is all about the next generation. The next generation go into all of their respective roles more informed and equitable to other people's difference. I think, you know, and that way we can all move forward together.
Okay, thank you. I've got a question here that comes from Robert Lewin-Jones. Did you have a particular mentor who was important to your career development? And what does good mentoring look like?
Ah, my mentor, well, God willing, she's still alive, my mother. You know, she's not in the construction industry as we know it, but she's in the construction industry of life. And she built a very successful skyscraper, and the lift that she put in that building took me to the roof. And on the roof, there was a helicopter, and I got in and flew. And, you know, my mother keeps me grounded. So I landed safely every time, God willing. But my mother is my biggest, best mentor. And second to that, apart from my maker, I would reference Nelson Ogunsegun, OBE. He didn't have to accept my request to meet, he did. And from that day until today, we struck a chord, and he's in the background. I call on him for moral comfort and no more. He's a busy guy, as am I, but he has definitely had a positive impact on my capacity to absorb the knocks. And he's also been there to congratulate me when I didn't realize I'd succeeded in doing something, because, you know, when you're in it to win it, you just keep going. You don't come up for air and you don't recognize the so-called successes. But, you know, if I succeed and the rest don't, then we all don't succeed. That's my view.
Thank you. I've tried to get as many questions. I think I'll take one more that I think could be interesting. Is what are the best ways to reach BAME to ensure that we reach them with our job opportunities available? And is there a particular language that can be incorporated into the ads? I know that we have done that for female and other genders.
In terms of where to go, there's no specific forums. There are particular recruitment agencies that, you know, purport to cater for the BAME community, etc. But, you know, other than that, it's just being honest with your ask and being willing to accept invitations from all parts of the community and being clear with that intent, really. You know, things are caveated and things happen, things are just done because it's the right thing to do. But I think people are getting wise to things that they know won't work. And, you know, you've got to walk the talk. If you portray that you are an inclusive organization, you know, many people go straight to your website and look at the history of your business or look at the leadership of the business. And they will come to various conclusions. So you've got to be, and I said it before, representation helps. And even today, if you look at the senior level representation in my profession called surveying, it's not great. And it can be improved. It will be improved because I've had an endorsement just this week earlier from the RICS CEO, Sean Tompkins. But, you know, we're talking about a generation to get it right. You know, I've been around for a generation, and I showed you 2 slides, one in 1999, one in 2019. Nothing's happened of significance. There's pockets of excellence, but generally we have progressed in reverse gear, if that makes sense. So I hope that answers your question.
I think we probably now need to actually think about closing down. There are a few unanswered questions. If people would like to have any other questions or ones they don't feel I've covered, they'd like to send it in to us at Leaders Meets. We'll ensure that they're passed on to Bola and we will get an answer for you. So thank you very much, Bola. I thought it was an intriguing conversation. Andrew, if you're there, I don't know whether you would like to close up today's session.
I would. Thank you, Howard. As always, thank you to Howard and John from Leaders Meets for hosting our webinar sessions. And Bola, that was a fabulous hour. We could have gone on for at least another half an hour, judging from the questions. So I think that's probably an example of what an important subject matter we've dealt with today, and the excellent presentation that you've given. So once again, Bola, thank you so much. We appreciate you giving up your valuable time to share that knowledge, experience and expertise with us today. Next week, we have two more, again, very important subject matters to talk about. Tuesday, we're looking at mental health issues with Stephen Haynes from Mates in Mind. And then Friday next week, it being Pride Month, we've got to deal with the very important LGBT topic. So again, around diversity, but this time with LGBT as our topic. So I hope you'll join us next week on Tuesday and Friday. But for now, I wish you all a very good afternoon. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you. Cheers.
Bola, if